Here with me is the POCO M4 Pro, and I've been using it for a week now, and here is my thoughts and opinion of the device. Firstly, not to be confused with the POCO M4 Pro 5G, which has been released a couple of months back. This is the 4G version of it, and the specifications of both devices are very different from each other. Despite this being a 4G phone compared to the 5G model of it, the 4G specifications are slightly better in terms of its display. Firstly, having the AMOLED display compared to an LCD display on the 5G phone, as well as a higher max brightness of 1000 nits compared to 450 nits on the 5G model. The processor is obviously different, one supporting 4G while the other supporting 5G, but both are running MediaTek processor, and the main camera is being swapped out here, where the 4G model has a 64 megapixel compared to a 50 megapixel of the 5G model. Putting that two models aside, if you were to compare spec by spec for this particular model itself, you would feel that it is fairly similar to a recently released phone, which is the Redmi Note 11S, with the exception of a few minor changes, such as the physical design of the phone. Obviously, POCO doing the POCO kind of design, while Redmi is doing its Redmi design. And at the back of the phone, POCO has the 64 megapixel camera, while the Redmi Note 11S has a 108 megapixel camera. And the camera count for this is triple camera instead of a quad camera, dropping the depth sensor at the back of the phone, which I feel there shouldn't be much of a difference, as well as the memory configurations that equates to the amount of price that you would pay for the phone. So if you were to compare the chart here, the Redmi device would be more recommended in terms of a spec-by-spec comparison. If you were to get the 8 plus 128 gigs, which is $20 cheaper than the POCO of 6 plus 128 gigs. Or if you want the bare minimum, you could go with the Redmi of 6 plus 64 gigs. Or if you want to go for the maximum, you could go with the POCO of 8 plus 256 gigs for maximum number of RAM and storage. Next, let's move on to the unboxing of the device. The box comes in yellow color, which is a typical color for POCO devices. Firstly, you are greeted with the paperwork together with a clear case that is included for the POCO phone. Then you are greeted with the phone itself, followed by a 33-watt fast charger and a USB-A to USB-C cable. Moving on to a physical tour of the device. On the front, you have a 90Hz Full HD AMOLED display. At the bottom of the phone, you have the speaker as well as the USB-C connector. At the top, there is another cutout of speaker as well as an IR blaster. On the left of the phone, there is a dual SIM card slot and an expandable storage if you want to expand the amount of storage of your device. And on the right of the phone, you have the volume rocker as well as the power button that doubles up as a fingerprint sensor. So upon starting up the phone, I noticed there are a couple of pre-installed softwares which I totally would not use them. It is a good thing that they are being categorized into a folder, and MIUI allows you to uninstall multiple applications at one go. And if you were to enter into the settings, there is a firmware update bumping up MIUI 13.0.1 to 13.0.5. And unfortunately, it is still running Android 11, which is the flagship Android version in 2020. Right now, it is 2022, and the Android 13 developer preview has already been out. So I would expect the phone to be at least minimal of Android 12 instead of Android 11. And if you notice the security patch of the phone, it is of last year version, but upon upgrading the phone, the security patch is updated to February 2022, which is not that bad. So this phone is running MediaTek Helio G96 processor, and it has 6 gigs of RAM for my version of the phone. And you could actually expand the amount of RAM by 2 gigs of RAM if you were to tap onto the virtual RAM, which is converting your ROM into RAM. It has a IP53 water dust resistant, so you could actually have some accidental splash onto the phone. And it has an NFC, which is useful for me because I would often use my phone together with Google Pay to pay merchants and for transportation purposes. So software experiences wise, it is using the POCO launcher. So by default, it is the app drawer style, which you could actually choose between that or the iOS style. And for POCO launcher, in the app drawer, it is categorized into different categories automatically for the different applications in the phone. The default implementation is the 3 buttons at the bottom, which is the back, home, and recent button, or you can actually swap it out for the gestures, which is the supposedly modern way of using your Android device. The control center is the default style for the phone, which you could swap out for the older style, which is the one that I prefer, because I do not want both of them to be separated and I have to swipe left and right to toggle between the notifications and the toggle. The default theme of it is light mode, which you could swap out for dark mode, which is the one that I prefer. and it should help in the battery life because it is an AMOLED screen. So with dark mode, most of the areas of the screens are black, which do not need to be turned on because of the OLED nature of the display. And speaking about display, it is running 60Hz by default, but it is capable of swapping to a 90Hz display, which is the one that I prefer because of how smooth it is. And since it is an AMOLED screen, you have capabilities such as always on display, and there are a couple of customizations which you could choose from the preset, or even you could modify based on the preset selection of your choice. As usual, the raise to wake and double tap to awake are turned off by default, so I would turn them on because those features I feel are pretty convenient in order to wake the phone from a sleep state. And there is a notification pulse surrounding the device if there is any incoming notification. Similarly to the Redmi Note 11 that I've reviewed recently, there is also that double tap on the fingerprint button to trigger any shortcuts of your choosing. For me, I would trigger the Google Assistant because that is something that I would use time to time if I have any questions to search online, and I find it very convenient to just simply double tap on the power button in order to trigger Google Assistant. So in terms of my day-to-day use of the device, I feel that there are several hiccups here and there with a 0.5 second lag that I cannot actually just continuously use the phone. I'm not sure whether it is the software or the processor. And for the vibration motor of the device, it is so bad that I actually turn it off, but that is something to be expected on a cheaper devices compared to a mid-tier or a flagship device. As for battery life, it is impossible for me to kill in one day because I'm pretty casual and light user. So that actually lasted me for up to 2 days of battery life. And if you were to run out of battery, it is pretty fast to charge up the phone, where I've tried to charge the phone from below 20% to 100% in less than an hour. So with two physical speakers cut out at the top and bottom of the phone, the speaker can go really loud, which is pretty good for media consumption despite the small screen that you have on your phone compared to a tablet or monitor or TV. If I'm not wrong, Xiaomi is the only company that does double cutout speakers at the top and bottom of the phone, where most companies would have a physical speaker at the bottom while using the earpiece as a secondary speaker for that stereo sound. And moving to the back of the phone will not rock on the table whether it is with or without the casing because of its design. Anyway, it houses 3 cameras at the back, which is the 64 megapixel ultra wide, which is the 64 megapixel main camera, 8 megapixel ultra wide camera, and 2 megapixel macro camera. And at the front, you have the 16 megapixel front facing camera. So here are some samples of photos we have taken day to day, which mainly are food photos. And I try to incorporate some nature photos which I like to take, as well as some selfie cameras photos to showcase how the camera of the phone will look like for both back and front of the camera. And I've also recorded a couple of sample videos to showcase a well-lit environment as opposed to a poorly lit environment followed by a super low light environment. So this is a sample of the main camera. It is shooting at 1080p at 30 frames per second. That is the maximum and highest settings that you can go to, which is also the default. And quality of it is not too bad. Under good lighting, as you can see. We got the sky here. It is a pretty warm weather today. And this is the sample of the ultra wide camera. Also shooting at 1080 at 30 frames per second. Good lighting, definitely usable. You see the clarity of it. I'm walking a little, panning a little, just trying to see how stable it is. And this is the front facing camera, also 1080 at 30 fps. So I'm just trying to walk a little to see how the stability of it is like. It's not too bad. And if the sky is at the background here, you could see that it's not blown out, so it's pretty good. So right now, this is a sample of the main camera of a poorer lit environment. As you can see, there is a little bit of grain, but overall it's still kind of alright. And this is the sample of the ultra wide camera. The details of it is a little bit poorer compared to the main camera. There are more grains compared to the main one. And yeah. And last but not least, this is the front facing camera. also in the same environment, and this is the quality of it. Couldn't really see because I didn't have my glasses on. This is just a sample to show you how it is like in an extremely low light environment at the corner of the cabinet. So this is for the main camera. The same thing, but this time around the ultra wide camera, which, well, you could see the octopus at the corner there, but other than that, have some light before you shoot at the ultra wide camera. And this is for the front facing camera. I believe it is of pink hue because of the reflection of the pink octopus there, so that's why it explains the entire screen being pink. So looking at the photos and videos, in my opinion, I feel that the camera are passable as long as it is in a well-lit environment. But other than that, it is expected for the camera to perform poorer in a darker environment. There is a night mode in this phone, but it only applies to the main camera at the back, and I feel that it just simply brightens up the photo, but the details of it is still kind of subpar. Both the main and the ultra-wide camera are good. And as for the macro camera, I feel that it is kind of like a hit or miss because of how it lacks autofocus, and you have to get the correct distance between the subject and the phone in order to get a clear macro photo. But other than that, in an overexposed environment, there's HDR to combat that issue, as you can see in this photo in a screenshot that I've taken compared to the output of it, where the HDR helps to balance out between the sky as well as the building. So overall, this phone starts at $349, which I've mentioned earlier on that the Redmi 11, which the Redmi Note 11S cost $299, which seems more worth it to get, but I did not purchase the phone to compare side by side. So in terms of specifications, it seems like that is more worth it. But for now, I feel that for the Poco phone, it's a relatively good phone for those casual users. You could use the phone well day to day with your social medias, your media consumptions, and you could take several photos such as the food photos that I've shown earlier on. And there's NFC enabled, which you could actually use for payment or transportations, as well as the overall software experiences and the features that you can enjoy with the phone. The minor side of not getting the phone, which is firstly the price, and follow-up, which is the pre-installed applications, which you feel may be a turn-off, but they could be uninstalled easily. And the software support, if it actually started with Android 11 in 2022, who knows, this phone might even get Android 12 by the end of 2023, or maybe not at all. So if you have enjoyed this video, do give it a like, do comment down if you have any opinions, and do subscribe for future videos like this. Thanks for watching!